and coming out and kicking that hedge and punching that hedge. I'm sobbing great tears of impotence into the hedge. And I said, I know what I'll do. I'll finish it. I'll go, it's not worth it. And I was suicidal. At that point in time, I was suicidal. I knew there was a rifle there, but it was dismantled. I thought, I'll get it, I'll do it. I'll finish it now, right now. I can recall so vividly that day. It was a lovely sunny autumn day, Friday, April the 26th, 1963. In the morning, I'd sat on the back lawn and actually written some letters. And at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, it was inevitable that I would end up without sight. I'd end up a blind person. I was helping a guy shift some empty beer bottles. And I was surprised to find that at 4 o'clock in the afternoon how dark it suddenly got.
Yes.
Unlike my previous attacks of blindness, it just became very, very dark.
When permanent blindness caught up with George Fellingham that afternoon, 20 years ago, at the Tokeroa yard where he made fence posts as a self-employed contractor, he was plunged into despair.
The retina detached itself again. I recall when I went back into hospital in May of that year that I had another operation, and I have often stated I was continually being dragged up a hill of hope and then dumped over a cliff of despair, because that is exactly what my life was in those days. I don't think I hit the bottom then, but I was back near the bottom. Well, there wasn't much future for a guy at 47 in those far off days. I remember returning home on a Saturday afternoon. I remember trying to buy a dozen of beer in the pub in Cambridge. I remember getting pushed around. I was a lost soul. I was a lost soul in a world I wasn't familiar with. I didn't like being blind. I didn't like what was happening to me. I wasn't at all happy about it, no way. But I think it was quite disbelief at that point in time that this was going to be inevitable. I didn't want it to happen to me. I wanted it to happen to somebody else. We all do. Now I'm living that again, and my face must reflect my feelings. I was thinking of the pure hopelessness of my life as I was then. I had 2 dependent kids, my wife. I knew no blind person I could turn to. About the only comfort I get is the love of my wife and her affection for me. They're the sort of things that one has buried in one's soul and never brought out the light of day, only under circumstances like this. And where could I turn to? Where could I go? What could I do? And that would lead me to get suicidal at that brief point in time. I was actually suicidal at one point in my lifetime, but it didn't last long. Now I'm starting to move out of this tunnel of darkness. I'm trying to get out of this pit. I'm coming up over the edge. And there's a high hedge on the left. And in the spring, little birdies are up there. Quite lovely to listen to, actually.
Most painful of all are the early months of blindness, the bitter days of massive readjustment, facing up to loneliness and rejection.
I remember going into town, carrying the old steel stick and dinging it along the footpath, to when you realise in a town like Tokeroa, 1963, I was the only blind person in the town. People were crossing the street and walking on the other side to avoid having to talk to me. I don't think the sighted should ever avoid the blind. A bang on the shoulder or a handshake means an awful lot, because you are there on your own and you don't know who's out there in that dark world.
Long after blindness comes, cherished memories remain.
After the 20 years of blindness, I realise that the visual picture of people has faded into fog, but there is one image that I do retain, and that's of my wife Zola. Over 20 years ago, she visited me in the Waikato hospital. She was wearing this delightful white polka dot summer dress, and she was laughing, and that is one picture that I have no trouble to conjure up at all, despite the fact of the fog and facelessness of blindness. My loss of self-esteem, my loss of self-respect had to be corrected some way or other. I had to be well dressed and clean and tidy and never appear poverty-stricken or anything like that. I had to create in those people that met me that I was capable of coping with the situation. I had to prove that I could rehabilitate myself. And I still had some residual pride left that I wanted to feed my wife and kids.
George Fellingham did just that. His blindness compelled him to expand his one-man fence post business into a successful company employing around
There's no
30
need
people.
for a sighted person to feel any guilt complex about meeting anybody you can't see. But please do talk to them. Don't talk to their partner. The fact that some blind people, some sighted people treat blind people who've got some other defect, like as if they're not mentally capable or whatever. Unless the good Lord give me a written guarantee that I'd have sight till the day I died, I don't think I could survive the traumatic experience of the sighted world, not after all these years. I don't think a blind person's second-hand stuff. That's all something somebody's told him. But of course, as the years go by, a person suddenly discovers that sight has no meaning at all. It's not there any longer. So you manage without it.